Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, October 3rd, 2005. This evening, City Council is meeting in regular session. We do have a quorum with all members present. Disposition of minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of regular sessions of September 6th and September 19th?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there further discussion on accepting the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes have been accepted. Communications. Are there any communications anyone would like to share with council? Would you like to do that?
Other business.
Other business, sure. Okay. Reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Hunter.
No report, Mr. President.
Okay. Mayor Abel. No report. Well, surely our city auditor, Kathy Heck, no report. Okay. Ordinances for third reading. O8405, an ordinance amending ordinance O0305, authorizing structural repairs at the Columbus Road Fire Department. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O8405.
Second.
I don't have the original ordinance in front of me yet. If someone does, that would be great. This ordinance authorizes the Service Safety Director to expend a total of $135,000 from capital improvements to repair the fire station on Columbus Road.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 8405?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 8505, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a revised contract with the Athens City County Health Department. Member Bain.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O8505.
Second.
O8505 adds some language to our current contract with the City County Health Department. This Athens City County Health Department was originally the Athens City Health Department, and in order to achieve the goals of the current health department, we need a minor change, and that's what's going on in this ordinance.
Is there further discussion on the ordinance? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 8505?
Aye.
Those in opposition? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 8705, an ordinance to rezone the Green Hills subdivision to an R1 zone. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O8705.
Second.
This is a 25-lot subdivision along Andover Road and Berkeley Drive. We've held this is actually accepting a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve this zoning change. We've had a public hearing and several readings, and tonight we vote on that.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 87? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted.
Excuse me,
Mr. President, I
I'm
just
sorry?
wanted to comment to the neighbors out there, and several of them are here this evening, to again congratulate them on following a very long process to make this happen, and I hope that you're very excited tonight that you did it right, you went through the right channels, and although it's taken a while, the end result is an excellent one. So congratulations on all your hard work.
Ordinances for second reading. O8105, an ordinance vacating approximately 8/10 of an acre of East Union Street from University Terrace to Stewart Street to Ohio University. Member Weil.
I think one of the previous readings, we wanted to find out where the right-of-way was going to be blocked by vacating this road. Did we find anything out from Mr. Katowski at that point?
The university and the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, who was questioning this, are in the midst of negotiations to assure them access to the back of their property. I expected someone to be, oh, there's Ms. Prisley. Do you have anything to say at this time, or wait till next time?
I heard from the university what they're offering.
Okay, so.
Should we table it till then?
Is that a
We can-
motion?
I move that we table it till we hear from the university and the sorority.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second to table ordinance 8105. Further discussion on tabling of the ordinance only.
Mr. President, I would prefer to wait until the third reading, and if we need to table it at that time.
And
Further discussion.
I agree with Carol.
and I'm sorry, I just assumed that's what we would do.
I believe that, looking at the minutes, which we just approved, is that he said he would come back to us at the third reading. Of course, this was before we've had at least 2 amendments and have pulled it back by at least, 2 weeks, almost a month. But we still have yet to get the information. I have no problem with a sudden death type third reading, finding the information. Hopefully it's correct. But on that notice, I still think we should table it now and wait. Give us more time.
We have a motion and second to table the ordinance. Is there further discussion on tabling of ordinance 8105? All those in favor of tabling the ordinance?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Those in favor?
1, 2, 3.
You got these, Debbie? And those opposed? It's 4-3, the motion dies. Ordinance 8805, an ordinance amending the 2005 appropriation ordinance. Member Weil.
I move we suspend rules on 8805.
Second.
This is for Ohio Avenue. Part of this money is for Ohio Avenue, and if we want to get it done before all the leaves fall on top of it, we should start moving, and before this concrete freezes. Ohio Avenue sidewalk, sorry.
Further discussion?
In the interests of the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Athens.
A bit of a stretch, but okay.
Well, no, not really. The
It's
days are getting
sidewalk.
shorter.
That's why we're building the
Sorry.
sidewalk.
My apologies.
Mr. President.
Your president was out of order. Okay. Is there further discussion on suspension of the rules on ordinance 8805? All those in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
I move adoption of 8805.
Second.
Okay, this is appropriation for the $22,000. It's $42,000 bolus of money. It's for the building of the sidewalk on Ohio Avenue between Watt and Shannon. The days are getting shorter. The kids still have to walk to and from. The other portion of the money, I believe, if my memory is correct, is for the leaf blower, but I forget exactly. But it falls into
Another
transportation.
timely. Is there further discussion?
Doesn't say, does it?
All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 8805?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 8905, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Board of Athens County Commissioners for the purpose of obtaining the services of the Public Defender's Office through June 30th, '06. Ordinance 9105, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement for the extension of the city water services beyond the corporate limits on Peach Ridge Road and authorizing the installation of a tap. Ordinance 9205, an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations to Michael and Connie Moritz for property located outside the corporate limits but within the 3-mile jurisdiction to allow a minor lot split and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 9305, an ordinance authorizing construction of a new restroom facility at Southside Park. Ordinance 9405, an ordinance approving the revised solid waste management plan of the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District. Ordinance 9505, an ordinance amending Ordinance O7905, closing a portion of Union Street from Court Street to College Street for an alternative fuel car show during Ohio University's Energy Awareness Week and declaring an emergency. Member Weil.
I move we put 9505 under suspension.
Second.
Okay. I think I saw Alvin McWilliams last week on the farmer's market with a shirt saying, "Eat more crow." If I was out in the audience, I'd be yelling, "You're suspending the rules too often." Part of this is this weekend, so we have to pass so we close the street. I'll start with that. How's that sound?
Okay. Further discussion on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 9505?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
I move adoption of 9505.
Second.
Okay, this started sometime mid-July, I believe. It languished till September, where I suspended the rules in early September. At that point, I got an email from the fellow who was trying to organize this and said, it's not just for 1 day, it's for 2 days. So here we are back again, adding an extra day. Originally, we had planned it to be Thursday the 6th, and now it's Wednesday and Thursday the 6th. This is closing Union Street, basically between Congress and College, Court and College. So here I am redoing it. Hopefully this is the final redo, because there's not enough time. This is for alternative energy. It's in cooperation with the university for their alternative energy festival, so to speak. And we may need more alternative energy.
And anyone that cares to go up will see the city's vehicle that runs on grouse grease.
Oh, yeah, the
That's
dump
what I learned
truck.
at the mayor's staff meeting, so be there. Further discussion on ordinance 9505. All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinances for first reading, O9605, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to purchase 2 marked police cruisers. Member Phillips.
As it says in the title, this ordinance authorizes the purchase of 2 police cruisers. We have estimates that the total will be $45,000. The ordinance, appropriates $45,200 from capital improvements. We will be using some of the communications equipment from cruisers that we already have, and then once the equipment is taken out and the stripes are taken off, the cars will be used in another department, the ones that are being replaced.
Further discussion. Ordinance 9705, little dyslexia action there. An ordinance amending the 2005 appropriation ordinance and the 2005 interfund transfer ordinance. Member Tamke.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is trying to accomplish 2 things. One, we're, in Section 1, we're allocating or appropriating $14,360 to Transportation Assistance Fund. This is a grant fund, so this is a pass-through. This doesn't affect the, this is not a general fund affecting sort of transfer. And then the second part, in Section 2, we itemize a couple of things we're doing with FEMA grant, with the FEMA grant. We will occasionally get reimbursements or get grant funds from FEMA to mitigate flood damage and some of the work that we do associated with that. When we get that money, we allocate that to the funds where we have had expenditures. And in this case, we're going to be allocating the roughly, looks like $19,540 to the street fund and the sewer fund. Those are 2 things happening here.
Further discussion. Ordinance 9805, an ordinance granting a variance from the Athens City subdivision regulations for property located on 2nd Street owned by James Cassels II and allowing a minor lot split. Member Sands.
Mr. President, this again is a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission to grant this lot split with associated variances. This is a large unplatted lot near the corner of Central and Second Street. There is a house facing Central, and then this is the large lot behind it. Mr. Castles would like to divide it into 2 lots. Both of them will have square footage of less than 8,000 square feet, which is the required lot size within the city of Athens. But we have some documentation here that we looked at before, that in this neighborhood, in fact, in many of the neighborhoods in Athens, the existing lots are far less than 8,000 square feet. So this would not create anything unusual in this neighborhood. So this ordinance would allow the lot split and grant a variance for the lot size. One lot would be 7,102 point something square feet. The other one would be 7,127 and some fraction of a foot. So.
Further discussion? Member Weil.
I believe it has enough frontage. I think the map that we were given showed 70 feet of frontage, which, 55 or 50 is required.
Exactly.
And I know from that area, my lot's less than 8,000. I think it's like 5,000. So this is actually bigger than, mine's 100 by 50, so, you know. So that gives you an idea that a lot of lots are like that in that area.
Further discussion? Ordinance 9905, an ordinance amending ordinance O6505 to increase the authorized expenditure for the renovation of the Arts West Community Facility, project number 216. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this ordinance, what it does is increases the allocation to the Capital Improvements Fund for work on Arts West, and it is as a result of money that has come in terms of donations, and so it isn't anything that isn't already coming in. It's all accounted for. It's just to make that money available to spend on Arts West where it was intended.
Further discussion? Folks, we break 100. Ordinance 10005, an ordinance amending the Athens City Code, Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 11.04, Vending, Peddling, and Soliciting. Member Bain.
Mr. President, O-100-05 was discussed at the meeting last Monday. The whereases to me seem important. It's necessary that the city recover lost parking revenue, garbage recycling fees, and administrative costs, at least partially, associated with vendors in the uptown area. Since we haven't amended the ordinance since 1987, it's probably time. Whereas a longer-term, more fully addressed revision of this vending ordinance will be under review by City Council in 2006 or 2007. There are 2 different reviews that have been proposed. One was proposed for buggy specifications, and that may or may not be okay. I guess I'm more in favor of the itinerant kind of buggies myself, sort of cobbled together, gives part of the charm. But then the other thing is, I believe that there are people who are currently could use the incubator if we can just free up some of those B licenses, and that certainly is another part of this. And so I would recommend that whoever's in charge of this would talk to Leslie Scheller or her equivalent and try to get some ideas on how this, our food industry, which is so good, would have a crack at these things that have been held so long. And so this is part of the proposal. So going through the changes, just to make sure everybody's on board as much as is possible with a hot topic like this. We have them paying a license fee, applying for a year, and it's on an annual basis. And we have the A licenses for $1,000 effective January 1. And then as an incentive to make sure that we do in fact get on the stage and take care of that actual revision, so we get some of these people that really need the incubator thing going. We have the 1,500, which could easily be changed by a council that takes upon the challenge of doing this. Okay, and what we have then is an allocation The garbage fund would receive $256 of this. This would mean that everybody who does business uptown is now contributing to the emptying of the baskets. And that certainly is something that needs to be done. We have no other way to do it but to charge the uptown merchants who all pay. And so that was part of the consultation. Recycling and EPA fees, once again, possibilities there, and the balance to parking enforcement. So we haven't really increased the parking fees at all. Category B, the license is up to $75 per year, maintaining payment to the parking meter when vending activity occurs. And then on the next page, we see, since we had some differences of opinion, we had another one of those 4-3 votes. The next council can deal with this, except during the annual Halloween event when certain streets are closed and special conditions are established by Athens City Council. Now, the future council, once it's gone through this, can say, there are no special conditions, and that's just fine. But let's just make sure we're doing it in a systematic way. They have to display their permit while vending. There are 4A licenses. As you can see, there's no more gradation. It's all straightforward, $1,000. B licenses. Now, this is the part where there's still some study going on. The B-type license holders will, B license holders, no type, must vend 20 business days to maintain their license. 20 was a number that was negotiated amongst the members of council in July when we had this earlier discussion. It seemed like an idea that would be on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday cycle. The number of days will be based on calculations made by the parking enforcement attendants, and potentially that's it. And then there's the evening B license is still in there. I don't think that's especially useful because Mr. Nasser was requested and got that from us. I don't know that anyone else uses it, but we'll leave it in. And that's basically a proposal to sort of get this thing moving, taking into account the changes that have been made in uptown garbage with much greater fees now being paid by the uptown merchants, and the 2,000 students up there probably don't need to subsidize the emptying of the baskets, and that should be taken care of. People who are using all of the businesses, including the vending, are putting the materials in the basket, so there we are. And that's basically the proposal. The only thing that's a little bit different, we sort of jockeyed around, I think, a little bit with the second year. I felt like given the 18-year hiatus between the initial and this one, maybe a little incentive isn't a bad thing. So that's my position. There we go.
Is there
I hope I
further
used the word
discussion?
hiatus in the right way.
Member Sexton.
My only reservation about this is the clause where it says except during the annual Halloween event. If we could either, I think it should be upfront what's going to happen at Halloween. If we could either add in a clause there, this is what it's going to be, or reference the ordinance, I think that would be good, so people don't feel like they're being hit up twice during a year, that it's upfront when you go to get your license, you know what's going to happen in the entire year.
Okay, Sarah, well, in response to that, I would say that we never had it in, I guess, before. We've added the word. So now we're saying, don't think that when you get it, it's for 365 days, it's for 360, however many.
3 or 4.
3 or 4, depending on the year. And so that's there. And then the future council can choose to change this totally. Maybe it'll be 3-4 that time, or 4-3.
I feel it should be in there if that's the way it's going to be practiced. It should be in there now, and it can be changed later.
You went, if you had some suggestion, we're on a short time frame. I think this says, I hope it says that there are, that it may change during Halloween. And so the license is for 363 days, or 64 days.
Member Tamke.
Yeah, thanks for talking about the second year. I'm still, like I told you when we talked today, if the second year going up to 1,500 is supposed to be some kind of poison pill that makes everybody
Get on the stick.
sit up straight and go, holy cow, we don't want that to happen, let's get this thing fixed. That's one thing, if it really works that way. I guess I'm going to rely on the conversations that happen subsequently to decide how I'm going to vote on this, since I'm not going to be here for that particular piece of it. I think despite its long hiatus, to jack it up that much in 2 years is a pretty significant thing, but from what you're telling me, that's on purpose. It's to make people sit up and kind of go, all right, if we don't do something, it's going to really sky up, and
Well, Dale, and I think that your point is well taken. If you'd like to put it to an intermediate spot and move to amend, I'd be happy to second it.
well, I have to think about it, because my first blush is just take it out altogether, but I know that's not what you want to do, so.
Yeah, I had some people who were concerned, who were hoping that we would do that, just so we get it done, so it's no longer dangling out there.
Yeah.
And so that's basically it. Jim?
Um,
Oh, you're supposed to do that.
She's pro-Timming right now.
Okay. I'm agreeing
Just can't
with
help
with
herself.
Sarah that we need to address whatever we're going to do with Halloween in this, and I think that, in this ordinance, and I think that this rather unclear statement leads us into that discussion soon to be had in 2006 that you're hoping we'll have. Well, we really don't have the time to do it now, and so I originally shared Mr. Tamsky's concern about the 1,500, but again, I see your reasoning, and if it just assures that we'll have this discussion, which, I mean, we've all said it in public enough, and Mr. Bias has pledged to lead us there, so.
Oh, I'm gonna make you guys go there.
Okay.
Member Weil.
I'm not sure really what the concern is about the Halloween clause in there. Put it in there assumes that Halloween will always be sanctioned. The fact is, the readings of the Halloween ordinances basically suspend all the vending licenses. So if all the vending ordinances in this part of the chapter, so therefore to say, let's put it in, and then with a subsequent ordinance that's going to be placed sometime next mid-year, just say it's all null and void. I mean, at that point, we may as well also reference the noise ordinance part, saying it's suspended during Halloween. We may as well amend any type of traffic law that occurs on Court Street, because it's suspended for Halloween. Okay, so therefore, we could start cross-referencing everything through the Athens City Code for this matter. The 1,500, I assume that number was generated by the parking meter numbers. I'm kind of surprised that the use or lose clause is not extended into the A license category too, because essentially I only see 2 A licenses up there most of the time. And if we want to free up other aspects of it. Not that I want to do it this time, as you say, even though you're going to be here next year, it's always a case of NIMTOC, as you would say.
NIMTOC, yes.
Yes.
Just to answer Mr. Weil for a moment, in terms of this, one thing I would like to see is that the people who are towing the buggies not park in those places illegally, the wrong way. I think that, it sets a bad tone. But, if I were putting something else in, that would be something I'd put in, that the meter attendants are hereby requested to ticket the people who park there. It's inappropriate that they be parking there. Find another spot for their towing vehicle and leave it there.
Member Patterson.
On this ordinance, there's some things I am comfortable with, some things I'm not so comfortable with. The first, whereas I don't particularly like, because I'm not sure that it's really answered in the rest of the ordinance. I can live with it. I'm not fond of it. I absolutely agree that we will be dealing with this issue in the next term, and will do what I can to facilitate that if on council. I very much object to the second year being listed at this point at 1,500. If we're going to discuss it again, I believe the exact statement was made in the discussion before. We never give up money that we've already asked for. So we put it in the ordinance with the idea that we could take it away next term. That is not going to happen. I think it would be better not to put it in, and if we choose to raise it next year, we could raise it next year. I also am a little uncomfortable with the Halloween phrase, although it doesn't really say anything. part of my thinking is that it would be much more fair to these businesses if they knew further in advance what was going to be expected of them. In the last 2 years, immediately before Halloween, we've assessed them a fee. Finally, I absolutely think that the 20 business days language is excellent and important, but should be extended to the A vendors.
Further comments by council members? Member Sands. Member Tamke.
Jim's probably highly insulted by that mistake. I just point out that, and I know that I wasn't here for the discussion, but my kind of analysis of if you look at the fines and the revenue and you count the spaces, that amounts to about $1,000 a year per space. There's about 604 meters, and if you add the tickets and the revenue from the meters, not counting the meters in the garage, you get about $600,000. And so, if the notion is to replace meter revenue actual, not meter revenue hypothesized or theorized, then it's about $1,000. And so then if you're going to recoup some of these other things, then there begins to be a rational basis for the fee. So it's just, I know that y'all might have thought about it in a different way. That doesn't assume some meters are more popular than others, et cetera, Although I pass by this spot frequently, there are times when there are places to park there. There are times, when one would be surprised that was the case. Certain early Saturday morning, early weekday mornings, so anyway, just an observation.
Member Patterson.
I also would like to comment in terms of the parking spaces. There are many parking spaces in town that are not open to parking. They're loading zones through most of the day for uptown businesses. Those businesses don't pay for those parking spots. So, and I don't mean that I don't think that their rate should be raised. I'm quite comfortable with $1,000 at this time. But to say that they ought to pay every cent of the parking for that space does not seem like a reasonable comparison to me. Raises in rates, yes, it's time.
This is quickly turning into a committee discussion where probably the best way is if we have any motions for amendment to change any of these things,
It could come up
to
at
see if there's
second
enough to do it. I'm
reading. It could
sorry.
come up at second reading where they can put an ordinance right behind it.
There's a lot of ways, but other comments by council members, then we'll open it up to the floor. Any others? Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak to it? Council rules provide that you state your name, your address.
My name is Paul Wildak. My address is 17525 Linscott Run Road in Amesville, Ohio. Not many people welcome a rate increase. I wasn't here last week, but I did manage to see the committee meeting on videotape. And by the end of it, I thought, this probably really isn't an unreasonable thing to ask for, and I'm sensitive to the issues of the garbage. But my understanding when I saw that was clearly that what was being asked for was for the rate to go up to $1,000, and I was shocked when I saw that it had this two-stage thing. And I am very concerned about it because I believe, as some of the council members have said, I don't really understand why it needs to be raised if it's going to be reviewed. It can be raised as a consequence of the review. And obviously, this is something that affects me personally, so I might have a different view than some others. It was also correctly pointed out several times that the ordinance has actually been amended since 1987, but the fees have not been raised since 1987. But what wasn't pointed out was when they were raised at that time, they were raised at 750%. It went from $100 to $750. And even the rate increase now from $750 to $1,000 is a 33% increase. And I think that's a pretty respectable increase. I'm certainly no expert on this, but I'm not aware of other license fees in the city that go up at these kind of geometric rates. You know, at $1,500 would be doubling it. Plus, there's this, we've just been assessed the Halloween fee. So I do ask for council to take those things into account. The other big concern that I have is, as I read this thing about the Halloween thing, it doesn't look like we have the right to vend unless council takes a special action. And I find that to be problematic. Whereas before, the ordinance gave us the right to vend for the year, and council would come in and cancel the ordinance for the night. If no action is taken now, or if for some reason ordinances get tied up in knots, where technically it makes it illegal for us to operate on that night. And I don't necessarily think that that's what was intended to be said, but that's kind of how I read it. So I'm concerned about that. I think that the 20 business day thing is reasonable. The only other thing I'd like to talk about just briefly is the situation with the garbage. I totally am with you, Nancy, with the idea that everybody uptown should participate in that. I did talk to Ray Hazlitt, because I know that you mentioned that you had some information from him. My concern is the fees suggested kind of assume that there's participation in the garbage program uptown, but the Court Street businesses pay their fee, but they're also entitled to leave their trash and garbage in there. That's all part of that program. And Mr. Hazlitt and I both agree that it's not a practical thing for us to do at this time. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody should take care of trash receptacles. I'm sensitive to that issue. I would hate for people to think that it's something that vendors have tried to get out of. We've never tried to evade that issue. We've really just never been a part of the mechanism. And speaking for myself and Nisar, who are the two people who are operating now, our solution or our contribution is to put our own garbage receptacles out, which we empty at our own expense. And I do want to point out that the dumpster fee I pay is $80 a month because we do end up with a lot of public trash in those receptacles, and I'm happy to do that. I think that's what I should be doing in lieu of paying the other fee. The other thing, and on recycling also, I mean, recycling is a part of everybody's water bill, as I understand it, and I do have a water bill which is paid for. I understand that maybe not everybody would, but I just did want to point that out because I don't want people to think that we're trying to get out of these things or don't think that we should contribute. So I guess that, what I would like to see, for whatever it's worth, is the $1,500 thing to just be stricken from there and have that taken up in this further review, which again I appreciate, and I appreciate the comments of and input from other council members. And I would also ask that the Halloween language be stricken. And then it seems to me that the way this is written, it almost structuralizes the possible contentiousness that we've had, because it requires us every year then to address it, or our right to vend goes away. Anyway, that's really all I have at this time, and I thank you for the time and opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Paul. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this issue? Ordinance 10105, an ordinance authorizing funds for engineering of a water line and pump station for the Columbus Road Water Project number 218. Member Bain.
Mr. President, 10105 is part of a larger set of improvements that we are working on, probably occasioned by the flood that happened in early 2005 that caused the sewer line to sink close to the river. And as a consequence, we've also have, with the mayor's inimitable efforts to get the best deal for us, we also have funding coming from other sources for the water line. We're going to have a water and sewer upgrade of substantial importance on Columbus Road. And this is one of the pieces in it, and this is the engineering part for $75,000. And that's what is going on in 010105.
Further discussion? Ordinance 10205, an ordinance authorizing the auditor to borrow up to $75,000 for the Columbus Road Sewer Project and declaring an emergency. Member Bain.
Mr. President, 010205, as we discussed in committee last time, will be paying for the engineering that will be necessary for us to replace the sewer line. The sewer line will be funded in large part, thank goodness, by FEMA. And we will be, because of the flood damage that was inflicted in early January to that line. And so you will be hearing more about the project, but this is the second piece in a larger set of activities we'll be doing.
Further discussion? Ordinance 10305, an ordinance authorizing engineering of a gravity sewer, lift station, and force main for the Columbus Road Sewer Project number 218. Again, Member Bain.
Mr. President, 010305 is a third piece in this. Right now, we have a we have a de facto lift station with a pump down behind the dental depot, and we need to make it into actually a lift station. And so that's what's starting with this. Once again, we're talking about money for engineering, $75,000.
Further discussion? Yes, Member Patterson.
I just wanted to comment on the work that everybody's put in so far on this. There's a lot of concerns in that neighborhood directly adjacent to where the break was and subsequently the temporary line. And so to see this moving ahead, I know they're quite anxious that something be more permanently resolved. And there's been a lot of discussion on the different possibilities and on the funding and to get some of the FEMA funding. And it's just a lot of work's gone into it, and it's good to see it moving forward.
Thank you. Next item is announcements and other business. One item brought to me this evening has to do with appointing of a voting delegate to the National League of Cities, and we need to move on it. Traditionally, our law director, Gary Hunter, has always been our voting delegate. Do I have a motion to appoint Gary Hunter as our voting delegate?
So
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of appointing Law Director Hunter as the voting delegate to the National League of Cities?
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations yet one more time, Law Director Hunter. Is there other announcements or other business? Member Bain? Oh, yes. It's not often this happens.
Yes, well, Mr. President, here we have an award to the City of Athens from the Ohio Planning Conference, recognizing the quality of our comprehensive plan. It was a juried award. Approximately 1 in 4 of the nominees were awarded such an award, so that's pretty good. 1 in 4 is pretty rigorous. And what they said when they handed it to us, it was Bob Eichenberg and I were both up there. He was attending. I just went up to Cleveland because I wanted to see Cleveland again. And we went through this, and what they were talking about is how extensive the public participation was, how well done it was, the extensive public input. They were very impressed by that. They were very impressed by the continuation of citizen planning efforts, specifically the neighborhood associations, open space, and transportation. They were also extremely they gave extreme praise, I'll get the words out yet, to the...
They liked it a lot.
They liked it a lot. to the graphics. So the GIS component was praised to the hilt. So I was pretty happy. It isn't often that we get the rush in Cleveland, so here it is, and it'll be hanging up pretty soon. And now it's time to pass it and get on with it.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Joanne?
To be
Will they
seen
take it
soon.
back if we don't pass it in a timely manner?
I don't think so. I think they'll just consider the source.
Other announcements? Member Tamke.
Councilors, in your box, I had placed the draft of a timeline for the budget discussion, and so there's discussion items in the timeline. The suggestion is that we'll review the timeline and refine the discussion items on the 11th. That's a Tuesday. Monday, the city building is closed for Columbus Day, and so I went ahead and made the kind of heroic assumption that we'd probably meet on Tuesday. Anyway, none of this is in stone. It's just, it's a way to get us thinking about the major elements of getting the budget passed by the end of the year. You'll notice that the trajectory is to try to pass the budget and the related ordinances on the 19th of December, which is usually what we try to do. That does two things for us. One is it leaves, and the important part is it leaves us some time if we have to adjust the budget before the end of the year when it absolutely has to be passed. It gives us a couple of weeks that if we have to refine things, we can do that. The other good thing it does is that if we don't have to do that, then we may enjoy a short recess at the holiday period. So someone's already suggested to me that under item 2, where we talk about continuing expenditures and allocations, that we'd add an item called contracts, and at that point, we'll talk about the chamber, and we would talk about the city county health, the sanitarian contract, those types of discretionary contracts that we have that come up for renewal throughout the year, but we need to make sure that we have the dollars for it. Anyway, look for that on the 11th. I think Debbie will be facilitating that discussion. I will not be here on the 11th, but I plan to be here for the rest of the time. The other thing I'd note on the timeline, well, maybe she won't, I don't know. Anyway, you'll notice on the timeline also, there's some blank time in some of these are all committee nights, except where noted as a regular session of council or a special session. We also have the potential to use some time before a regular council meeting if we find that we need to spend a half an hour or 45 minutes talking about a specific item related to the budget. If we agree to, if we want to, we could do that. I'd like us to stay on Mondays if we could, since we sort of have the apparatus all geared up to film it and broadcast it and all that stuff. So anyway, it's time to do the budget again.
Is the season.
Thank you for doing it. It's helpful.
Any other announcements? Member Sands?
President, several weeks ago, we agreed to schedule a Planning and Development Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 12th, at 7 o'clock in these chambers. The topic of discussion will be the proposed retirement development on Stimson Avenue. My plan is to work toward drafting an ordinance that would come out of this committee meeting that we would then bring forward for further discussion and a vote. It obviously will be a public meeting. Representatives from the developers will be here.
Okay, just a reminder. Yes, Member Phillips.
I have a memo from Mayor Abel here recommending appointments to the Tree Commission. So I would like to move that we appoint Lee Gregg and Alvy McWilliams to one-year appointments effective July 1, 2006, that we appoint David Ingram, John Woodrow, and Emily Wood to two-year terms effective until July 1, 2007, and that we appoint Tricia Lockman as an alternate through July 1, 2006, and there remains one unfilled alternate position. If anyone is interested in learning more about the Tree Commission, they could get in touch with the Tree Commission.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the named appointments? All those in favor of the appointments?
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations.
Probably need to find someone on the south side,
Other announcements?
west side.
The last item on our agenda is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that have not been covered on tonight's agenda. If there is anyone that would wish to speak before council, please come to the podium. Seeing no one and having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.